Welcome to tonight's episode of Myths and Stories. We have been going over the history of the Cabal in our previous episodes, and we're going to be continuing that series tonight with part 3. We're anticipating that this is going to be the third part of a 4-part series. Depending on how far we get tonight, we may have to adjust those expectations, but that's what we're thinking for now. So,
Yay, expectations. Tonight's episode is a special episode too, because I am doing this recording from my bedroom because my back is feeling like shit tonight.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I sound a little different tonight, I apologize.
Yeah, Zor is putting his body on the line to get content out.
Yes.
So don't say he's not dedicated.
No one can say I'm not dedicated.
That's right.
I've raided from my truck in a thunderstorm with hurricanes, gale force winds. No, I'm just crazy, and I like doing what I like doing, and I don't like letting my body shut me down. Or things, simple, trivial
tornadoes.
things like electricity. Yeah, and tornadoes. I don't like that shit. Like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. So that's a thing.
The rating from a truck story is true, and how we did part of our day one for Vow. So
it was so awesome. My truck has built-in internet, and I had my PS5 and a monitor set up in the back seat and a little inverter plugged into the. I was like, "We're doing this," and it lasted a little bit until the inverter was like, "Oh my god, the PS5 pulls like 20 amps. What the hell's wrong with you?" and just shut down. And I was like, "Oh." Anyway, yeah. So back to the Cabal. This is part 3 for our history of the Cabal, and we covered all the way up until basically the beginning of D2.
Yep.
But I kind of want to go back in D1 just a little bit. Because I mean, obviously the Cabal are there in D1. It's the Cabal aren't just the Red Legion and the new. What are we calling Keidel's forces?
That's a good question. I don't know if they've been given a name, to be honest.
I mean, because most
other than
most
just
of the Cabal forces
Empire,
have like that Legion, right?
Yeah, most of them have a Legion.
Well, it may be going back to that, because now here's a question, and this could probably be answered back in our first episode. Did they have different legions or different houses during like the days of Acreus?
I don't know that they explicitly state. They did have houses or legions rather, as early as they had the Praetoriate, and I do believe it's stated that the Praetoriate was designed by the first emperor or came into power alongside the first emperor, which would imply to me that they did have those factions at that time. But,
so I guess I'm curious if now that Keidel's kind of in power, well, I said kind of in power. Keidel's, and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
She is the Empress, yeah.
She is the Empress. She is Empress Keidel. She is the head of all Cabal right now, basically, or the head of the Cabal Empire right now, correct?
Yes.
So I'm curious if we're seeing this return to that Empire state, if they are wanting to reinstate the idea of legions, or if they're trying to just have a unified empire now.
So, from what I can find doing some quick Googling, the only name that's been attributed to Keidel's current forces is the Imperial Cabal Legion. So, the Imperial Legion.
So then it seems like.
But it does seem like there's one.
Right. It does seem like she's trying to have a unified force, which seems like that's might be intentional to not have things like Callus and Gaul happen again.
Yeah, hard to say if this is born of a plan or just out of necessity, because there aren't a whole lot of Cabal left, at least narratively speaking.
Absolutely. So okay. So now that I've jumped ahead, now let's rewind a bit. So going back into D1, there's not a whole lot of Cabal history happening there, right? Like, it's mainly just scouts and scouting parties of this expanding empire. under Calus's rule at the time, right?
Under Gaul's rule at the time.
Under Gaul's rule. Right, because Calus had been exiled on the Leviathan. That's right.
Yeah.
We talked about
And
that last time.
it is difficult to say how long ago that exile happened. But by nature of
Just
Calus,
because we don't have a good time frame.
Right. But by nature of Calus having the opportunity to drift in the Leviathan long enough to reach the quote unquote edge of the universe, and then do all of his little, exploration and shadow gathering after that, tells me that it's a pretty significant amount of time has gone by since that coup.
Gotta have been at least a couple of centuries.
So I think it's reasonable to say that Gaul is most likely in power at the time of D1, but he's back at the home world, the Torbottle, the Cabal home world, where the legions that we are having conflicts with in D1 are almost exclusively scouting parties and looking for resources, not really expecting any kind of full-scale warfare and
or resistance of any type.
Yeah. And they end up in the Sol system, supposedly because of resources they can find on Mars. They want to mine Mars and later Nessus. And lo and behold, they discover that not only is there one hostile species, but 4? Vex, Hive, Fallen, us.
How's that for a welcome to the Sol system?
Right?
Apparently, this is the hot spot in the universe to be.
So, needless to say, they don't do much of political significance or really even military significance during D1.
Well, I was going to ask, what are there different houses or legions that were named during D1?
Yes, there are. So there were centered around Mars and Phobos was the Siege Dancer Legion. They were a scouting battalion, and they were in direct opposition to the Vex that were on Mars. And specifically,
so solely there just to deal with anything Vex.
I don't think they were there to deal with anything Vex, but they set up shop on Mars, and where they set up shop happened to be right outside the gate to the Black Garden. So they were dealing with Vex whether they wanted to or not.
Yeah. Whether we wanted to or not, we stepped into a war on them.
Fun fact, that little bit of dialogue is in reference to the Siege Dancers, so it fits.
God damn it. That's too good. That is too good. Yeah. Okay. So we've got the Siege Dancers,
the Siege Dancers
dealing with the gate to the Black Garden.
Yep. We have the Blind Legion, who I do not remember exactly where they were. They may have been on the other side of Mars. No, that would have been the Red Legion later on. I'm not entirely sure where the Blind Legion came from. We have the Sand Eaters, which they were.
They like to eat sand.
I think they were also on Mars. This is really bad. I'm trying to remember all of the old D1 planets and struggling to do so off the top of my head.
This is the problem with a constantly evolving world or a constantly evolving video game, that some things become irrelevant and you just don't they just don't matter anymore, and so trying to remember back to that. Yeah, no, that's a hard thing to do.
It looks like I pulled up all of the various legions here. It looks like they were all based out of Mars during D1. So we had the Siege Dancers, which were the elite troopers led by Velis to Arc from the infamous copypasta at this point. The Sand Eaters, also found on Mars. The Dust Giants, also found on Mars. And the Blind Legion, also found on Mars.
Seems like a lot of sand-oriented people. Makes me think that Cabal's homeworld was very desert-like, right? Like very
maybe.
At least that's what it seems like. Because if
It's definitely
they
where they
found Mars and
gravitated
were
to.
like, yeah, when they land on Mars and they're just like, hey, this is great, let's start mining shit. That to me says like they're used. I mean, Callus had the exile, the Mr. Waternoose,
Mm-hmm.
exiled in a
Into a
sea
desert.
of
Yeah.
sand.
The
So
the
yeah, so
console, but yeah.
I'm curious. No, it's console Waternoose now.
Oh yes, of
That's what it is now. That's canon. No, no. So yeah, so it seems like they very much are like acclimated to a desert type uh environment, which is I think what I think that's why they stick to Mars, right? Like we have a little bit of Red Legion on Earth, but that's obviously because the Red Legion invaded Earth. But
course.
I can't think of anywhere in like anything of D1 that there were Cabal anywhere other than Mars and the Dreadnought.
I think that is exclusively where they were. Now this,
There might have been a little bit on Venus, but the more I think about it, the more I think that might have been taken on Venus.
yeah, I don't think
It
there
might
were
have been
any
taken Cabal on
Cabal.
Venus.
From the information I'm looking at here about the different legions and where they were located, none of them are listed as being on Venus.
Okay, then I'm going to say they were exclusively to Mars.
Yeah.
Because there was also something that, and I don't remember where I read this at, or if this is just my brain playing with me. Didn't the scions or the scions that were present on Mars pull the moon of Mars, Phobos, closer to the planet?
I don't know the lore card, but I do vaguely remember there being something about the Scions had. I don't know if it specifically said pulled it closer, but had altered the orbit of Phobos for unknown
I
reasons.
think that's what it was. I think that's what it was. Altered the orbit.
Yeah.
That sounds more familiar. So yeah, and I didn't know if there was any type of significance of that either.
Not that stated as far as I could. It didn't show up anywhere when I was doing research on it.
I mean, if it was just a single lore card,
Other
I don't
than
think
just
it was
that one
too
little
important.
one-off notice of
Yeah.
it. So yeah, during D1 we had 4 primary legions. You had the Siege Dancers, which were the elite soldiers. You had the Sand Eaters, which were the most common. They were the large scout legion that was sent out alongside the Siege Dancers. Within the Sand Eaters were the Dust Giants, which is kind of a subdivision that was specifically the veterans of the Sand Eaters, those that had proven themselves exceptional in combat. And then the Blind Legion, which was the science and research group of the Cabal that were landed here. They were tasked specifically with incursions into Vex structures and research on that to see if any of it could be used for the betterment of the Cabal Empire. So those were the main ones
A Cabal
that we were dealing with.
scientist is a Cabal scientist is just a guy with a bigger gun. That's all it is, or a bigger drill.
Or a bigger drill, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is.
So we had various tussles with these different legions throughout the D1 campaign prior to Taken King, and most of them never amounted to more than a single strike. It was mostly just the city and the Vanguard didn't want this warring species to be able to get a foothold somewhere, so they would send the Guardian or other Guardians out to just kick them around a bit.
Right, because the at that point in time, Guardians were already dealing with Fallen. We'd been dealing with Fallen for years by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vex. What did we really have a lot that we dealt with the Vex?
We knew about the Vex because even as like Osiris knew about the Vex well before our Guardian.
Well, because even around. I mean, we knew about the Vex back in the Golden Age with people like Maya Sundaresh and Clovis Bray. Like Vex have been here for a hot second, but they never really seemed like a threat.
They weren't considered a very large threat at the time until essentially the Exo Stranger showed us, our player Guardian, that the Vex were a big deal and were gonna cause a bunch of issues via the heart of the Black Garden. until that point, I think just because the Vex were doing things that weren't immediately antagonistic against the city, and a lot of the terraforming that they were doing wasn't obvious. A lot of stuff is happening inside the planet.
Sure.
So for the most part, I think the Vanguard just had better things to worry about, at least in their opinion, until
I think you're right.
discovered that there was more going on there.
And the fact that the Vex do a lot of stuff inside a planet, that kind of like plays back into the Cabal, right? Like the Cabal are all, at least all the scouting parties that have been to the Sol system have all brought massive drills that are drilling into the planets, trying to get resources, and everywhere they've drilled, they just so happen to slam into
a
some
Vex.
sort of
Yeah.
Vex construct or mind or whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they apparently they're like ground penetrating radar isn't very good. They're just like, screw it, good resource here, go mine here, and they go, okay, we go mine here now.
The Cabal
Yeah,
don't
that's
even
what
bother with ground penetrating anything.
I don't
They're
think
just
they
like,
do.
we'll find shit when we drill into it.
I think you're right.
So, needless to say,
So yeah,
those were the main legions we were fighting in D1 until the Taken King happened. And we talked about this a little bit before, but just to recap, the Taken King campaign, mission number 1 is not us going to go fight Taken or go fight Oryx. It's actually us going to Phobos to deal with the Cabal that are starting to amass there.
yep.
They are
Huge army.
building up an army at Phobos with the intention of invading the city because they're done with the Guardians kicking them around the system at this point.
I mean, we were and still are kind of a bunch of badasses.
Mm-hmm. So, but when our Guardian gets there, we find the Cabal there either dead or already in combat with, at that point, unbeknownst to us, Taken. Which then keys off this whole. Essentially, Cabal are just forgotten about after that first mission. They're like, oh no, this big bad. We gotta deal with him instead.
They really are. Like, it's because I remember that mission. Like, you spend the whole first almost half of it kind of like going through these spaces, and there's like little to no resistance at all. Like, there's just no enemies, and you get to a certain point, and then Oryx shows himself. Like, the Taken King shows up as a giant Taken King head, and then tons of Taken just start pouring in, and the entire last part of that mission is you running.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally like, get to your ship, get the hell out of there. We need to get away from this, and we need to figure out what the hell is going on here with the Taken stuff.
Yeah. So when Taken King kicks off, the Cabal do not, the surviving Cabal, and they took huge losses. Blind Legion, 35% gone. Sand Eaters, 58% gone. Dust Giants, 39% gone. From a Taken King scannable in that first mission. So like huge swaths of their forces are just disappear. And so when we're fighting our way through the Dreadnought, the remaining Cabal actually reach out to the Cabal, high command, essentially. And the message they receive is capture or destroy the Dreadnought at all costs. And so
that's a big deal for Cabal too.
Yep. And so
win or don't come home. There is no lose.
What they do is all of these legions seem to come under one banner, and they call themselves the Skyburners. And the Skyburners are the ones then that drive one of their ships into the side of the Dreadnought as a way of opening a passage for Cabal troops to start flooding into the ship and, in their hope, either take it over or figure out how to destroy it.
Ballsy move on these guys.
A little bit. We run into them when they fail to take it over, they decide to destroy it. Where we run into the Skyburners specifically during the Bond Brothers strike, where two Cabal commanders, who are supposedly brothers, are trying to blow the Dreadnought's core, either not realizing or not caring that doing so will take the entirety of the system with it.
Yeah.
So
Because if y'all remember from the Books of Sorrow stuff, the Dreadnought is not just a ship. It is also directly tied to the Ascendant Plane,
mm-hmm.
As well as Oryx's throne world. Like, he bonded it to that. I mean, so that's a lot of power in one spot. And if the Cabal were able to, if they were able to succeed there and just blow the thing up, like that, I mean, system ending is a very apt term there.
So needless to say, we put a stop to that because we kind of like the solar system where it is.
Which, for those of you that didn't get to play D1, absolutely phenomenal strike.
Oh, I so hope they bring it back.
Huge ass Cabal. Were they Colossus? Or were they the big ones with the feather head thing?
Let me look here.
I think they were Colossus.
They each had like jetpacks. They weren't Colossus with the Gatling guns. One of them had like it laid down a bubble essentially, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
On like a heat shield bubble, and the other one.
Yep. And he was completely immune in there, and the other one would just constantly slam into you with his fire attack. And this whole thing, the entire arena is completely open. All you have is the central pillar that they're trying to blow up that's rigged with explosives, and you're literally just wailing on these two bosses this whole time. And it's phenomenal fight. Super, super fun fight. Definitely hope they bring it back.
Yeah, I hope so too. But we deal with them, and that's kind of the only major interaction we have with the Cabal from that point forward.
Right.
And
because the next thing was Rise of Iron, and that was all Fallen and Siva.
Mm-hmm. But what we do discover is that, you know, having been beaten back at every front against, you know, every enemy, or at least every enemy we're aware of, the Cabal finally send a distress signal to the Cabal homeworld saying, our scouting parties are not enough for this. And that distress signal ends up reaching Torbottle and Dominus Gaul. And so he does what he has done with countless worlds before. He mobilizes the Red Legion, which is the task force specifically designed for conquering and destroying worlds, which had prior never suffered a defeat.
Man, what an army! Like that's a bunch. That's a hard act to follow, right? Like, we have never suffered a defeat. We are badasses. Suck it, world. Suck it, universe.
Yep. So that brings us into D2, the vanilla campaign of D2. And if you have not seen the cinematic for this, if you happen to be someone that started the game afterwards, I highly recommend just look it up on YouTube. It's definitely out there still. But we are greeted with this stormy night, and it's following Zavala and Ikora, and at the time Cade, in the old D1 tower. And they're talking about, you know, how bad this storm is, and they're keeping an eye out for things, and Zavala's like on edge because something just doesn't feel right. And he's telling them, you know, check the satellites, make sure that nothing's coming at us. And Ikora informs them all that like we're not getting a feed from the satellites. And there's like, so they're not picking anything up. She goes, no, they're not there anymore. Which is then shows in the clouds in the distance, as thunder is rolling in the sky. You start to see the hulls of these ships poke through, flying ever so slowly and menacingly towards the city, and they just unleash this huge volley of missiles. And you have Zavala go full sentinel, and put a bubble around everyone in the tower or everyone that can jump in it. And they just decimate the entire tower with this missile barrage. And their goal is to affix this webbing to the traveler who is floating inert over the city. Our
Such
guardian,
a good cinematic, such a good
so
freaking
good,
Cade
so good.
goes golden gun and like golden guns a freaking ship out of the sky, like badasses.
Our guardian, for whatever reason, was out somewhere else doing something else at the time, and
that's always drove me nuts. Is like our guardian was literally not there, like the greatest guardian. Because I guess that's the thing about guardians. Like, is there canonic? Obviously, there has to be more than one guardian canonically, right? Like that's the whole thing with fire teams and all that stuff. Like there are hundreds of thousands of guardians, but it always seems like our personal guardian is the savior. Is that supposed to be like canonical that we are the savior, or is it just like a generic like you as the guardian are the savior, or are a savior rather than the savior?
So it's a little bit of both, but I think whenever you're in a main story mission, that you are the guardian. You are the god-killing, guardian. But if you're in things like strikes or patrols or those kinds of things, then you're, as far as the narrative goes, you're a guardian.
You're just a guardian helping defend the city, basically.
Yeah. So you kind of fill both roles, but anytime it's story related, you are the guardian, the big badass of the city.
That's kind of a cool way to play it. Like that's always intrigued me, and I've always loved that aspect of Destiny, is that you're not just a guardian, you are the guardian, but then they can revert back to you are just a guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that shift back and forth. But anyway, you're literally off in La La Land. Nobody has a clue where you're coming from, but you're flying in, and the ghost is like,
you didn't want to decrypt your stuff at Rahul, so you went to the reef to go talk to their cryptarch, and you come back and the house is on fire.
Had to hang out with Petra for a bit. Yeah. That's literally what it was. Like you fly in, and it looks like smoke, or it looks like clouds, right? Like a rainstorm or something. There's thundering happening, and you bust through the clouds, and the city is on fire. Like it is literally on fire. There's this thing stuck to the side of the traveler, and shit is hitting the fucking fan.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to do a play-by-play of the entire mission, but
we should. It's so good.
It is good.
I do miss the D2 vanilla campaign. That is one thing that I wish we had as just like a playable thing, right? Like just go play the mission type thing.
As much shit as D2 vanilla got, and rightfully so, for a lot of things that were going on with it. I feel like a large majority of the criticisms were around the systems, not around the story that was told, for the most part.
The story was fantastic.
I would love to see them. I would love to see them bring all the campaign information back, but
we might do. We hashtag future episode spoiler alert.
Oh.
we might do an episode on the D2 vanilla campaign for all of you non-D2 veterans out there.
Well, we're going to do a good majority of that in this episode, so because it pretty much all deals with the Cabal.
Absolutely. So we land in the hangar. We fight our way through the tower. There's Cabals just constantly pouring in. Ikora Nova bombs a ship and then rides it down to nothing. We keep going through. We get to the end of it, and we come face to face with, Amanda Holiday picks us up and takes us up to one of the command ships.
Takes us up to the command ship.
And we come face to face with a very important Cabal.
Yeah. So, and the reason why we gravitate towards that command ship is not just because we know, cut off the head of command kind of thing. It's because news has reached us that the commander of the Cabal that are attacking us has captured the speaker, and he is being held on that ship. and that's our main driving force for boarding the ship, is to get the speaker back.
For those of you that don't know, the speaker was a very important person in D1.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't exist in D2 anymore.
He does not.
So
he was
very important then.
he was a political but also a religious figurehead for kind of the worship
Very
of
much
the
so.
traveler and the light in general.
Absolutely.
And that,
And even the Vanguard themselves, right? Like that's kind of how the Vanguard, like the Vanguard, I see the Vanguard as like the military side of
Mhm.
of
I think that's accurate.
that political arena, and then the speaker is more like the religious side of the Vanguard, you know, of the tower.
Yeah. But so we're going to try and rescue the speaker, who Gaul has captured alive, specifically because of the speaker's attachment to the traveler, who Gaul has this fascination with. And so we board the flagship, which was named the Immortal. We destroy its shield generator, so that there can be a concentrated aerial attack by Amanda. Or that's the intention of a concentrated attack on this ship. But the attack never materializes because the Cabal are just beating back the forces elsewhere in the city to the point where they can't assist us. Gaul personally steps forward out of his ship to face the Guardian, the player Guardian. And as we are about ready to face off with him and show him just what god-killing badasses we are, this web around the traveler activates and cuts us off from the light of the traveler. And in the scene, like, our Guardian essentially just hits the floor. Like, they all of their strength leeches from them. Our ghost falls out of the sky, is still alive, barely, seemingly, but cannot fly anymore under its own power. And our Guardian goes from this, like, all right, I'm gonna kick your face in, to literally like curled up in a ball, huddling, hugging the ghost to their chest, as
Straight up fetal position, like loss of strength.
yeah. And Gaul has a little bit of a speech here. You are not strong. You do not know what strength is. You have just forgotten the fear of death. He says, I command legions, conquered worlds, waged war across the galaxy to prove my worth. I alone am worthy of the traveler's light. And then he promptly kicks you off the deck of his ship.
Which is high above the city at this point.
High,
like,
yeah.
We're not just like floating like 30 feet off the ground or anything. We're like up there. We're a couple hundred feet above the city, and he just kicks you off like, suck to suck, loser, and you fall.
You just plummet.
And you plummet. Like, it amazes me the like how much of the being connected to the light is a strength for the Guardian themselves. Because I mean, when it cuts off, like, we are visibly defeated. I mean, we're crippled, like physically crippled. It's such a powerful moment there, and then Gaul to be just standing over us and be like, "Sup, dude?
Yeah.
Suck it." And just kick us off, like 1 foot kick us off the edge of his ship and be like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna take this shit, and this is mine now."
And
I mean,
the way I think about that is not. I wonder, and I think maybe this is what they're going for, because obviously we have seen, even in the present game, guardians that have lost their connection to the light, via their ghost being destroyed, that are certainly not as able as our, ghost having guardians, but they're not crippled to that degree. So I think it was probably a combination of, like, the shock of going from,
oh, sure,
I am superhuman, to I am mortal, and I have literally never felt that way before.
Yeah.
And that just, like, there's gonna be a change that needs to be adjusted to.
Absolutely.
So it kicks us off the immortal. We plummet into the city below. Do not know how we survived that. Just saying.
We literally wake up in a crater. There is literally when you wake up there, you are in the center of a crater. So we fell with some force.
And our guardian, kind of goes on a little adventure to rediscover a connection to the light. But because this is not a Guardian episode, this is a Cabal episode. While our Guardian is off doing their thing,
I like how you did that.
we're just gonna they do some shit.
We're just gonna.
Yep.
They do some shit and they get the light back.
But while they're doing that, the Cabal have completely taken control of the tower and presumably a majority of the city. The citizens of the city are in hiding in whatever buildings they have. Cabal are patrolling the streets looking for stragglers.
Well, and they're even setting up fire bases around Earth. Like there's Firebase Hades?
Yep, Firebase Hades.
Out in the EDZ. Yeah. I mean, they're taking over. They have found this great thing, the Traveler with the light, and they have come to say, we are not going to lose. We are Cabal. We are here to conquer the universe. That is our sole. That is not just our sole purpose. That is our birthright as Cabal, is to own the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to come in with this level of force and to just completely decimate is not, at least on the Cabal side, that's not unheard of. Like that right. This is literally a non. This is a legion that is never lost.
This is what they
do. Absolutely.
So while the Guardian is off doing things, Gaul now has control of the tower, has the city under his martial law, and he has a number of conversations with the imprisoned speaker. Because he is just enamored with the Traveler and this idea of the Traveler choosing someone to be a light bearer. And Gaul wants to be chosen. He is using the speaker as a conduit to speak to the Traveler or get information about the Traveler as to, like, how do I show that I am worthy? How do I make the Traveler see that I am the correct choice for this gift? And this is where we see a bit of a divide between Gaul and the Consul, who has been, his closest advisor, as well as kind of the mastermind behind his rise to power in a lot of ways.
And even to go as far as say as a father figure.
Yeah, I would say so. Certainly raised him.
Absolutely.
And the Consul sees the Traveler purely as a machine, sees it as a tool to be used, and he tells Gaul, like, look, you have this light, this technology that can seal the light away. It won't be hard to adjust that technology to funnel light into you, so just take what you want.
Take it. You are Cabal.
Yeah. And Gaul is very... doesn't want to do that. He's very reluctant to do that. He wants to be chosen. He wants the approval of the Traveler and to be gifted this.
And that to me is interesting. Like that's almost like a psychological level. Like, is this?
Oh, absolutely.
Does he want to be? Does he want? I mean, this very much is like an abandoned child who has been raised as a gladiator and raised to take down Callus, now is seeking approval from something. Like there's a lot of stuff to be said on a psychological level there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he sees the Traveler with a certain kind of divinity, a certain kind of reverence of, like, this is a god of the light, or at least that's the vibe I get from some of his dialogue.
Absolutely.
And he's looking for approval. He's looking for somebody in his life. Even the Consul has only ever seen Gaul as the means to their own end, for revenge, for power, for protection, whatever it may be. And Gaul
as a tool, basically.
Yeah. And Gaul is saying, no, there's this thing that in his eyes is universally the judge of who is good, of who is worthy. And I want that thing to validate me, to validate my
And
existence.
that's an interesting thing too. Gaul even sees the light or the traveler as good, as just inherently good. And that was something that we talked about in our Light and Darkness saga.
Mm-hmm.
The light itself isn't inherent. It really is just a tool, but Gaul definitely sees it as, at least the traveler itself, as a god, as a you know, all these guardians that have driven back all my scouts and defeated all these scouts and have just completely decimated my forces throughout the entire. I mean, and even the Taken, right? For the Taken
Mm-hmm.
to have done all that with the darkness. And so that's where it's like Gaul is seeing this as like, this is all powerful. I need to be chosen by this.
Yep.
I need to be seen because I am who I am. I need to be seen as the chosen one, basically.
Yeah. Now, all that being said, that doesn't mean that Gaul doesn't recognize some military strategy here and want to make sure he has all of his bases covered. And in order to do that, he sets up his prized warship called the Almighty, and makes it, gets it in position and prone and ready to go so that it can destabilize the sun and force it into a supernova to just wipe the system out altogether if he deems that the best course of action. So he's got that prepped and ready to go.
That's something we discover as we're going through the campaign, is that he's got this ship that is literally the places that he couldn't subjugate or couldn't bring into the Cabal. He just destroyed the entire system.
He just wiped them out.
It's not like he just didn't just blow up like one planet or kill a settlement. He literally destroys the sun, makes the sun go supernova to destroy the entire system,
mm-hmm.
and then moves on to the next one.
And it's referenced in the campaign that's something they've done more than once before. Like, that's pretty regular, a regular thing if they can't completely conquer a system. So he's got the Almighty. In addition to that, he starts dictating where some auxiliary forces will go. He sends some forces to the European Dead Zone to hunt the remaining now mortal, most of them except us, Guardians, who were able to flee the city. He sends some to Io to mine the remaining energy from the Traveler there, because there's still a lot of the Traveler's light energy because it was in mid terraforming. Before it left.
That's a potential source. He sees Io as a potential source of manufactured light.
Yes. Yeah. He wants to try and see, can I pull the energy, the latent energy of the Traveler out of Io and put it into some usable form.
Presumably some weaponized form.
Right, because Cabal, that's what they do.
It's Cabal. Their Ministry of Science is also the Ministry of Defense. That's the way I see that going. The guy's like, oh yeah, we discovered plutonium. Hey, we can atomize it and turn it into a bomb.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's do that. That's the way I see Cabal, Ministry of Science / Ministry of Defense going. Because their Ministry of Defense, I don't think is a defense. I think it's like one of those, like, the best defense is good offense. So their Ministry of Defense, their Ministry of Defense is actually their Ministry of Offense instead.
How do we attack but attack more?
Exactly.
So he's got those forces out there. He also sent a force to Nessus to study the Vex on Nessus. And he sent a force to Mars, for those of you that, to reinforce the Cabal that were already there.
Real quick. Nessus is a real thing. I didn't realize that was a real thing. It's actually in our solar system. It's in between. It's a dwarf planet in between. It kind of has a weird orbit, but its main orbit is between Saturn and I always forget if Neptune or Uranus is next. Which is the next one after Saturn in our solar system?
You're gonna put me on the spot. I want to say Neptune.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna say Uranus just because Uranus.
I don't usually pay attention to the planets that far out.
They don't matter past Saturn anyway.
No, you're right. You're right. It's Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and then Pluto if you count it.
I'm counting Pluto. Pluto deserves a spot on this council, and he's the whole reason why the darkness was let in anyway, because we neglected to. No, I'm not going there. This is a Cabal episode.
This is not about the nine.
But yeah, but yeah, Nessus is a real dwarf planet. It was discovered, I want to say, in like 2000, no, maybe 93, 95. I mean, it's a very recently discovered planet. So, but it is a dwarf planet, so we're not counting it as an actual planet. Lord knows if it's like of the 9, and then that's like the 10th one. Whatever, fine, it's whatever.
Yeah. So it states
Cabal
this,
go there to mine resources.
It states this in the Destinypedia page, which is one of the sources that I use, but I could not find any information to back this up. But I do think that it makes sense. So the Destinypedia page states that the forces that Gaul sent to Mars to reinforce the Cabal that were already there were successful in driving the Vex from Meridian Bay and destroying the portal to the Black Garden, as well as most of the Virgo prohibition, which was the Vex, I guess, set.
Sure.
The group of Vex that were defending Meridian Bay prior.
That'd be like the Vex Legion that was there, or battalion, whatever you want to call it. I think that statement is true because, and this is not two truths, two lies again, but because the next time that we go to the Black Garden, we have to go through another gate on the moon. Yeah. We don't end up going back through Meridian Bay. So I think,
and in fact, we never revisit or even talk about that other gate.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that is true. I think that Cabal forces have overtaken that, because that's the other thing too, is when, again, skipping kind of forward in time, when we look at the intro to the Witch Queen campaign, the Cabal are bringing this massive freaking cannon to a base that's there on Mars. It had to have come from somewhere, right? Like they could have built it pretty fast, but I think that they are just pulling more from their resources that are already there on Mars that Gaul sent to reinforce Mars. So yeah, I think you're right. I think as much as that could just be just a Destinypedia entry, I think that we can take that as a correct thing until we're proven wrong.
And so, while all of these other operations are happening on the Cabal side, the player guardian does gain their light back via a shard of the Traveler, which has apparently been out in the swamps somewhere until now. And they reform the Vanguard, who had been scattered in the wake of the attack on the tower. So we bring them back all together. We learn of the threat of the Almighty as the kind of last ditch. We're just going to take everybody out weapon. Guardian disables the Almighty and then mounts a attack with the Vanguard against the Cabal and the base that they have within the city.
And that's an important note to note there too about the Almighty. All we did when we went up there was disable the weapon, because when we get up there, we learn that it is tuned to the resonance of the sun. So if we were to blow up the Almighty, it would take the sun with it. So we can't just take it out. We can't just blow it up. We just disable its weapon, so that way it's just kind of sitting up there.
It's just inert,
doing whatever it does.
Yeah, it's
just inert. It's just chilling.
After learning that the Almighty has been rendered useless, the consul is very angry with Gaul, and is telling Gaul, like, forget all of this stupid shit that you're trying to do. Just take the light. We have the technology to do it. You will be superpowered, and you can put a stop to all of this stuff that's now starting to come down around us. And he's Gaul is refusing to do so. He's remaining adamant. No, I need to be chosen. I need to prove that I am worthy. And so the consul kills the speaker. it's not very clear in the cinematic that it happens in.
Right.
But the consul kills the speaker as a means to force Gaul to have no other choice. Because Gaul sees the speaker
but
as
before
his one
but
conduit.
right before well, and right before he kills the speaker has a talk with Gaul about the light itself, and that's where that whole um devotion, right? Devotion inspires bravery, bravery leads to sacrifice, sacrifice leads to death. So feel free to go kill yourself, is what the speaker tells Gaul.
In the
Which
the best lines I think that have ever been
fucking
given in the
fucking
game.
fantastic, right? Like, feel free to go kill yourself. Like, holy shit, where where was this firepower? Where was this fire? Yeah, but that kind of turns Gaul inward. Like, he's like, okay, I that kind of gives Gaul that idea of, okay, I need to find am I not devoted enough? Am I not brave enough? Do I
Right.
not inspire enough? Like, that's I think that little speech there that the speaker gives Gaul is very much an inspiring moment for Gaul. And then later on, like I think almost in the same scene, I think, or maybe it was the next
I
scene or
guess
whatever.
the next scene,
But
yeah.
the speaker says something very important, and that's that he talks for the traveler. He never said he spoke to the traveler. And that's kind of like it. That's where we see the true nature of the speaker as very much a religious figurehead.
Yeah. He is not
To
literally
try to guide. He's not talking to this,
right.
like, they don't have deep conversations over Earl Grey tea on the weekends type thing. He just he just he just he tries to give some sort of guiding thing, which is, I think that's where we get this idea of, like, the light is good, the traveler is good, everything about it is good, is because that's how it's been portrayed to us. And so that's where even I think Gaul has that idea of, this is a good thing, this is a god, this is all powerful, I need to be chosen by it. And he very much gets very pissed at Consul Waternoose
Mm-hmm.
after Waternoose kills the speaker.
Yeah. So the consul murders the speaker, giving Gaul no choice but to take the light. By removing his conduit of understanding what the traveler is looking for. And Gaul recognizes that he no longer has any other options. But he decides that the consul also is not worthy of continuing to live. So Gaul kills the consul,
Boom.
and then goes forth to his confrontation with the Guardian, our Guardian, who is fighting their way up to him.
So here's a quick question back to our previous episode. Remember when we talked about the what do we call them? The downfall of Callus, right? Like, all the different members
the
were given.
co-conspirators.
Yeah, they were all.
Mm-hmm.
It was all foretold that they would die in certain ways and whatever. Was the consul's way of death ever told there?
So the consul, yes. So Callus says, the vile consul must die. I sentence him to death by his own weapons.
Boom!
And
He literally built Gaul from the ground up, and his own weapon killed him.
And I think that is actually a really good point. So I'm gonna read, or paraphrase a little bit. The consul has some dialogue with Gaul, after killing the speaker and before being killed by Gaul. So Gaul says something to the effect of, I must be chosen. I must prove my worth. The consul kills the speaker and then is yelling at Gaul, and says, you have already been chosen, not by the traveler, but by me, the day I found you as an orphan and raised you to be the warrior who would deliver our people the promise of vengeance. And I think the console trying to say, no, I was the one that chose you. I am the one that decides your worth. Kind of is part of what made Gaul finally snap against him, because Gaul has been
I
looking for
100% think
something
so.
to choose him as a, like, you are your existence is validated as something that makes the universe better. And the console is saying,
because he was orphaned. He was a
right.
runt. He was an albino runt that was literally thrown away in the garbage. And I mean, that's a
the console is saying, like, no, you don't need the traveler to pick you because I already picked you. Like, yes, but you picked him as an implement of your own revenge. And I think that's finally the bit that makes Gaul go, you know what? Fuck you, dude. And snap his neck.
Yeah. By the way, all these are this is all in game. This was all in game.
Yeah, these are
were all in
cutscenes.
game cinematics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if you the viewer or you the listeners of our podcast, if y'all get a chance, go check them out. They are absolutely phenomenal cutscenes. The cinematography is fantastic. Everything about them is awesome. Just go look up D2 vanilla campaign cutscenes, and I'm sure you can find them. I'm sure Bungie's got a couple of them loaded up on their page. They're really, really good. Really, really fantastic scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so Gaul kills Waterdeus.
So Gaul kills the console, and then he goes to the top of the immortal of his worship, and does exactly what the console forced him to do. He uses the mesh, the shield that they've got around the traveler, and uses it to siphon the light power into himself. And our guardian arrives at the top to see him in this, like, twisting vortex of light energy as he's being supercharged with it. And we have our final showdown. And during the final showdown, he's using supers against us. Essentially, he uses Dawnblade, and he uses
pretty sure he uses Golden Gun too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he uses Golden Gun. Yeah, or something similar to it. So we're fighting him, and eventually we defeat him. And I saw this as an interesting take on what happens afterwards. So Gaul, after we kill him, he seems to resurrect into like almost as a being of light. And somebody theorized that I failed to take down the username. This was something that I saw on Reddit. Apologies if this was yours. But
if this is yours, uncredited user, know that we love you.
He used some version of the old Sunsinger Radiance super, which, for those that didn't play D1, warlocks could literally spend their super to resurrect themselves for, at the cost of their super bar. And there's a theory that, like, that's how he came back, at least briefly, was through some sort of radiance.
I like that theory.
But he, in this giant light being form, declares himself immortal and essentially starts talking shit at the traveler. And the traveler finally...
He really does, too. He totally just turns around and is like, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah. It's like, I don't need you. I've done what I have always done. I have taken what I needed. And we all know the light has to be given. It can't be taken.
Yep. Cannot be taken.
And the traveler wakes up and does the first and only thing it has ever done since the Destiny games came out.
No, it did one other thing once.
It did one other thing once?
It healed itself.
I don't know how that counts.
It put its pieces back on.
It solved the puzzle. Like, come on.
It solved a puzzle. It put all the pieces back in the right spots. Yeah. It did something.
But
No, the Traveler's never done anything. Let's face it, it's just kind of a useless ball that floats above the city.
But it hears some smack coming from Gaul, who has stolen the light, who has taken the light, in a way that Savathun never did. And maybe that's why the Traveler never specifically stepped in, because its light was given, not taken, and that's its one rule.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and it uses a massive shockwave of light energy to obliterate the cage that's holding it, disintegrate Gaul even in his all-powerful light entity form, and then it keeps going. This shockwave in the cutscene, it's shown to encompass all of Earth, and then expand outwards and all of the solar system, and then expand outwards and all of the galaxy, and on and on and on and on. And perhaps the entire universe was hit with this wave, this light wave.
Boom.
And that is the moment that the darkness, or the witness, was keyed into the fact that the Traveler was still alive.
And I think it's a two-part thing, right? Like, I think that's one part of it, right? Like, because at the very end of it, like, that was the big, like, bump 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 moment, right? Like, it shows the light expanding through the universe, and it washes over these pyramid ships, because the collapse has already happened once. Like, the witness was convinced that it had
Right.
ended whatever meddling the light we're saying this because we have no other, again, until we're proven wrong, this is what we're going with, that the gardener, or the Traveler, was defeated there during the collapse. And so the witness would just, like, he was like, all right, he's defeated, I can go dormant, the universe is just going to end its way, the garden is going to the garden is just going to play itself out, and the Vex are going to become the final shape, and they're going to end the universe, and we're all good. So at that point in time, the witness had, or before all of this, like at the time of the collapse, the witness had convinced he had won. But then this light comes over and washes over these pyramid ships, and now the witness is like, well, shit, I've seen that power before. I need to go deal with it. But I think at the same time, since it does wash that far out, it washes over another ship, the Leviathan.
And that's what keys the, well, so yes, you're probably correct. By nature of it going everywhere, I'm sure it hit the Leviathan at some point. The Leviathan was already headed to Sol, though, prior to this.
And why was that?
Because from our last episode, Callus was tracking Gaul to take revenge on Gaul. And he stated in his letter to Gaul, like, I know you're going to the Sol system, I'll see you there, essentially.
Gotcha.
So he was already set on his course before the death of Gaul and the light explosion.
I'm curious if the light explosion physically did anything to, because the light is a paracausal ability. Like, it is a paracausal power. I'm curious if it did something on a paracausal level to the Leviathan and everything on the Leviathan. It just, I mean, did it do something to him? Do we know if it did anything to him?
I mean, if it did, there's no record of any changes happening.
That's kind of mind blowing.
Because
like,
I mean, this is
paracausal power just washed over everyone, and they're like, oh, that was weird, and they just continue on their path. Like, that's.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what else, like, what else would they do? You know,
I mean, you got a point. Yeah, like, this thing just washed over him as a shockwave. Like, they don't really have anything else to do other than, oh, that was weird, and just continue on.
And technically speaking, it's happened at least once before with the origins of the Awoken, which will be a future episode. We, like, the light wave happens, and it connects with a dark wave, essentially. But that's way out in the edges of our solar system where the Exodus Green was. So presumably that light wave went through all of the planets prior to that and all of the human civilians on those planets. You know, and they
and everyone
were
just
fine.
went, huh, That was weird.
Well,
It
they
went
were
about
already
their
having a bad day at that point, so.
I guess you're right. Like up until this point, like the Cabal have been ravaging through the entire solar system, just fucking shit up left and right. And then this wave washes over, and everyone's like, "Huh? I guess I'll go back to fighting Cabal like I was doing yesterday." Yeah, no, absolutely.
Another, like, an interesting thing to think about with that though is if it did go universe wide, what about other sentient species in other galaxies that had nothing to do with the light or
just,
dark up till this
just,
point?
just random fucking Joe Blow fucking alien go, "What the fuck was that?"
I've never seen that kind of
and
weather
Joe
before.
and Joe Blow Alien's wife is like, "I don't know, but get back to fucking plowing the field, you little shit." You know that's exactly what happened out there too. Like that's
Yep. But
oh my
so
god.
Gaul is defeated, and
100% defeated.
shortly thereafter, the ship of the Leviathan shows up in our solar system.
Near Nessus.
Near Nessus, within orbit of Nessus. And it immediately sets to work on reclaiming the Cabal Empire. So the Red Legion, who is leaderless at this point, is just spread throughout the solar system with, only a very loose chain of command, however high it happened to go in, that particular unit's planet.
Very broken chain of command.
I mean, they're not talking to each other. They don't have anywhere to turn to anymore. It's just purely survival at this point.
Yep.
And now, out of the blue, comes Callus, who is bringing forth, saying, I will forgive you. You can join and become part of my new empire, and his new legion, which he simply calls the Loyalists, the Loyalist Legion. And a lot of them jump at the opportunity because, like, that's better than where they were at. And although Callus was, taken out in a coup, it's implied that he wasn't completely hated. Like, that was the whole reason they had to exile him instead of killing him outright, was because he was well received as emperor, and they thought that killing him would cause an uproar.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's very possible some of these soldiers,
with how much of like a golden age he kind of brought them, right? Like,
yeah,
Callus very much lived it up. Like he was very much like, wine, sex, and drugs, rock and roll, fucking A, right, man, let's live it up. And so to take a figure like that has that much personality about him, that would have absolutely, like, I think if they had killed Callus, the Cabal might have ended itself. Like I
Cabal
truly
in the Sol
think that they
system
would have
at the
gone,
very least, yeah.
absolutely. I think they would have warred out in no man's land, just fighting for eternity. I would think, over the loss of this great leader, of this great Emperor Callus.
Mm-hmm. So Callus offers a place to go for some of the remains of the Red Legion. A lot of them gravitate towards him. Some of them don't. Some of them go, you know what? We were better under Gaul. Like, he lost, but his way of thinking, the military way of thinking, is correct. So I'm not going to join Callus. But Callus got enough that he formed his own legion called the Loyalists. And he discovered that the Guardian is the one that killed Gaul. And as a similar to the end of how the consul died, I sentence him to death by his own weapons. For Gaul, there isn't anything in particular. He just says that to the one who kills Gaul, I will offer an audience before my throne. And that's exactly what he does. He sends an invitation to the Guardian, which we find by killing Cabal and having it dropped from them in game.
Yeah.
But
literally.
But it's an invitation addressed to us, the Guardian, to board the Leviathan. We do so, which we talked about last episode, kind of the different areas of the Leviathan. And Callus, intentionally puts us through tests within his palace on the Leviathan to take our measure,
Right.
essentially. And
To kind of like deem us worthy, right? Like,
right.
because that whole like I grant an audience with, I think because Callus saw Gaul in the arenas back on Torbottle, and liked him. Like he very much saw this as a great warrior.
Mhm.
And so to me, whoever could defeat that great warrior has got to be an even greater warrior, right? So like
Yep.
that should be, and I think that's the whole reason why, um, well, obviously not the whole reason, but he literally invites them to an audience with him. But I think that's why he's giving that invitation out, is to say, I want to meet this warrior. I want to possibly bring this warrior into my fold. I want this warrior as not just a person to have a conversation with, or grant riches or whatever. I want this warrior as like my new number, like right hand man, my new general type thing, is what I think. That's at least the way I saw that invitation.
Yeah. Well, and up to this point, and even during the time that he wrote that bounty on Gaul, Callus has been gathering shadows. And so he's already been in the market of like, okay, I'm gonna gather these great and powerful warriors to my side, so that they can help me herald in the end of the universe in the way that I think it needs to be done.
Yep.
And so we go through the Leviathan raid, and which culminates in a showdown with Callus, or at least who we think is Callus, and then as you complete the encounter, it turns out to be a robot that's just made to look like him, or look like how we believe he did look at one point in time. And he's like, hey, good job. You beat everything I put in front of you. You've proven you're strong. Here, have some rewards. And you are worthy of being by my side at the end if you so choose.
And is there any reason at all, like this that is the one thing that's always confused the piss out of me out of the original Leviathan. Why was there a robot Callus?
So there is a reason. We get what that reason is when we talk about the Glycon.
Okay then.
But it's essentially, not to spoil too much of the Glycon, but it is that Callus is no longer in a physically fit state to do much of anything, let alone fight
I mean,
six guardians, despite
he's
his
got to be old
claims
as shit, right?
of power. It's not just that. I think it's also he's been doing things to himself,
Oh,
to make himself closer to the dark, or closer to whatever he saw at the end of the universe, which we theorize is the witness.
sounds like a lot of naughty things.
Sure.
Okay. Experiment. No, that's even worse.
Nope. Just end it there. End
it there. We were there and then we left.
Yep. So after our initial proving through the Leviathan, we then have a bit of an additional opportunity to show our power when the Leviathan ends up gobbling up a chunk of Nessus that happened to contain an Axis mind, by the name of Argos.
Oopsies.
And
we're talking like big mind, like bigger than Quoria.
Oh yes.
Mind. Like this guy is freaking huge. We're talking like end of the universe mind. Like this is a huge mind that the Leviathan gobbled up in the process of eating Nessus.
And it's a mind that it is stated that if it's not dealt with, like it could potentially cause either the destruction or downfall of the Leviathan, or at the very least would stop it from functioning. So
I mean, if there's anything Vex are, they're freaking resilient and they are freaking. They have one thing. They literally are governed by one thought: survive, or not even survive, exist.
Yep. And
Yeah,
that existence comes from eternal propagation. And so Callus takes the opportunity to say, like, hey, Guardian, I got a problem. If you fix it for me, I'll give you some good stuff, because he knows that's what drives us. Grow fat with strength.
If there's anything that drives a Guardian, it's more freaking loot.
Yep. Say, look no further than a good loot weekend for trials to see how true that is.
Shit, you're not wrong. You know what? You are not wrong.
So, but during, as you complete the removal of the mind, the Axis mind, which this was all in a raid layer called Eater of Worlds, Callus gives this dialogue. If you seek the means to live to your potential, I can guide you to it. There is power in the universe far beyond your feeble light. I leave you with those words and these parting gifts. Take them and grow fat from strength. The parting gifts being the loot at the end.
So he's already toting the I've found the darkness.
Yeah.
He's
already saying, like, yeah, your light is cute, but I know so much grander, so much stronger things that exist, and I'll share them with you if you just, bow your head,
solve
and
my problems,
say that you're that I own you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
which that raid layer was released during what we as veterans call the dark times of Destiny 2. The first expansion, Curse of Osiris.
Yeah.
Which, okay, I'm going to tangent just for a second here. I promise I won't linger on this long.
Tangent alert.
I really did. What?
Tangent alert.
Tangent alert. I thought you said danger alert. And I was like, no, it's not that bad. But yeah, so as much as Curse of Osiris and Warmind, those two expansions, kind of catch a lot of flack. And even Bungie themselves have acknowledged, like, yeah, this wasn't the greatest of times. I still enjoyed them. Like, narratively, they were fantastic. I really did like the whole weekly thing of the building the different weapons during Curse of Osiris, where like it was like what was it, like King Queen Jack or Jack 3 or whatever, and all these really cool weapons that you could build. That was on a weekly rotating thing that they, if you had done 3, 5, and 10, you now get access to 7, 8, and 1 or something like that. And then as you do those, you get more access. And if it was a really neat way of creating a come back and play each week game cycle loop. But yeah, I think a lot of people missed out on that portion of Destiny because it was it was kind of hastily put together, I feel like. And Destiny was not really in a good spot at the time, but
it released. I think it was a victim of circumstance in a lot of cases. I agree that the story was actually not bad, in my opinion. I know it certainly had issues, and a lot of people point those out as part of Destiny's problems at the time. But I feel like if you were to release the same exact content now, it would be much better received.
I think so too, especially with the seasonal format that we have right now.
Yeah, I think it was a byproduct of vanilla had been out for a significant amount of time. Some of the luster had worn off at that point, and people were like, I really don't like the double primary thing, and it just feels really stale, and I don't really have reasons to go get guns because guns did not have random rolls then. Once you got one, it was it. And they were looking for the expansion to really give them more reason to go do things. They're looking for the expansion to fix some of that, or to give them so much more content that they could ignore it for a little bit, and it did not do either of those. And that's the big reason why people soured so much around Curse of Osiris, in my opinion.
I think yes, I agree.
All right.
So yeah,
Tangent
so
done.
okay, tangent off, tangent done. So yeah, so Eater Worlds happens. We solve another problem for Callus inside his Leviathan ship. And then what?
So the next thing that I want to talk about is the last raid layer of Leviathan, that was the Spire of Stars. And this has some importance to the Cabal, outside of just like, we ate a Vex. I need someone to go deal with it.
Whoopsies.
Guardian, your name is now Pepto.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
So
upset stomach, diarrhea. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening now. Yeah.
So we talked about, a large portion of the Red Legion did gravitate towards Callus as their new leader, but there were some that did not want to be subservient to Callus again. They didn't agree with his philosophies, and those members of the Red Legion propped their own leader up as a replacement, as a new commander for the Red Legion, and his name was Val Kaur. And
now what's the significance of Val? Because I that's one thing that I know is pretty common amongst the Cabal. We know we have things like Baron and Primus and what's another one? I can't think of another one now.
Yeah, so let's see here.
But like there's like Val Tarok, Val Nisha, Val whatever. Like is there some significance of being named Val apostrophe something? Is that like a
so
a
that is a
general
rank.
Okay.
So Val is the second lowest in command in the Cabal legions and serves as a captain to a Cabal unit. Is typically a bodyguard for a Valis. And a Valis is the third highest, and the highest then being the Primus or Dominus. So you have Primus / Dominus at the very top, which was Gaul.
Right, Gaul was named as a Dominus, and was that just his version of Primus? That was just him saying, I'm trying to break away from the old ways type thing, and I'm calling myself Dominus? Or was there ever any other Dominuses? Dominuses?
So
Dominis?
I don't know if there were any other Dominus. There are other Primus. So you can be a Primus and a Dominus at the same time, but being a Primus does not mean you are a Dominus. So I'll do the full hierarchy here. So you have the Dominus at the very top, or Emperor, which Gaul refused to call himself. Below that then is Primus, and the Primus is the head of a particular legion. So Gaul was both the Dominus of all Cabal and the Primus of the Red Legion. Underneath,
kind of ballsy to take on two rules.
Yeah, underneath the Primus is where you have the Valis, who is like the vice admiral, I guess is a way to equate them.
Okay.
They
so kind of in charge of like a single ship or something like that.
Yeah, in charge of units within a legion,
like a detachment or something. Yeah.
And then Val is under Valis and maybe given leadership of a small group within a unit, kind of thing. A small strike
So if we were to
force.
look at this, and so to me, thinking with my army brain, we'd have like a general, president or emperor. That'd be the top one. Then you'd have your main general, and then below that you'd have like your lieutenant colonel or colonel that would be in charge of like a battalion. and then below that would be your battery commanders or company commanders. That'd be like your Valus, and then, or sorry, that would be your Val. So your Primus would be your general. Your Valus would be your lieutenant colonel or full-bird colonel. And then below that would be your captains, like you were saying. That would be your Val. And then, is there anything below that?
Brachus is below that.
Brachus. So that'd be like your platoon leaders. So that'd be the next thing down from your battery or company commanders would be your platoon. So yeah, that structure makes sense.
Yep.
Oh my God, I understand Cabal military structure because I was in a military. Oh my God.
So here's the fun thing though. Relating this back to the current season. So when Saladin is conscripted kind of into Keidel's Cabal, Keidel's empire, he's conscripted originally as Brachus Forge. So the lowest level of command in the Cabal army.
But still a level of command.
But still a level of command. Yep.
That's kind of like, that's a big deal.
So, but because the way apparently, and I'm going off memory a little bit here, I don't have it in front of me, but the way that Cabal gain rank is by defeating a Cabal of their desired rank in combat, in like a ritualistic combat. And
we do the same thing in the military. We just go out back and kick the shit. No, we don't do that. No, that's not a real thing. No, it's not. Do not. No.
So when Brachus Saladin Forge is challenged by a Valus as to you shouldn't be here, you are not worthy of being a Cabal. I'm gonna, defeat you in combat and exile you from us. When Saladin defeats him in combat, Saladin hops the whole Val rank and goes straight from Brachus to Valus.
That's kind of that's a jump.
Which theoretically, I suppose, means that he has the ability to command units of the Imperial Cabal, and actually does so in the PSYOP mission, where he is saying,
yeah.
I am sending units to you as support during some of the PSYOPs.
Well, they also talk about, and I'm curious if this is more of an Iron Banner thing or not, but he talks about having like instead of like Iron Wolves, they have Iron War Beasts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, is that like his personal version of like,
that might be what he's named his unit,
like bodyguards or something? I'm curious if that's what it is. Like, he's just anyone that takes on that Iron Banner philosophy, and because Keidel even mentions, that they've taken their own form of Iron Banner,
mm-hmm.
which I hope to God we get to see next season, which would be super awesome if we have like Cabal Banner or Iron Cabal Banner or whatever. Anyway,
it would be cool, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Right. Anyway, so they're holding these Iron Banner matches out here in Cabal land, and I'm assuming like when he's getting these guys that are worthy of being what would essentially be an Iron Wolf or an Iron Lord, he is starting to make them Iron War Beasts or something Cabal equivalent, and that's what he's forming his unit as, is what it seems like.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Again, not to jump ahead and then to jump back, but that's what's.
So to go back to Spire Stars here. So Val Kahur, so the second lowest rank of Cabal leadership, sees the power vacuum left behind by Gaul, and essentially like proclaims himself the new Primus of the Red Legion.
I mean,
which is
that's
quite
what happens
the jump.
With power vacuum. Yeah.
But he's successful enough that the other members of the Red Legion follow him, or those that don't want to follow Callus follow Val Kahur, and they lead a fleet against the Leviathan in an attempt to kill Emperor Callus and seize the ship as the Red Legion's new like home base.
Yeah, like their flagship type thing. Yeah.
Yep. And he, Val Kahur, as well as a number of the Red Legion, are successful in occupying the area referred to as the Spire of Stars, which I believe is like an observatory,
I think you're right.
traditionally on the Leviathan, and uh, they even destroy one of Callus's robot duplicates,
Yep.
in their siege. So Callus responds by leading, or I don't remember him explicitly like requesting that guardians come to his aid, but I think he leads them to fight against Valkahur, with the promise of shinies, essentially.
That's all we need is just a promise of loot.
And again, it just when we are successful in doing so, now we've killed the second leader of the Red Legion, and the few that survive this encounter truly, I don't think they ever have a leader again, until Keitel
Red
rolls
Legion
around.
are very broken. Yep.
So we've essentially completely eliminated any real militaristic threat from the Red Legion, and Callus again does the whole like, you are very powerful, you've proven yourself to me, have some armor and weapons, and when the end comes, you can stand right here next to me.
Yeah.
And then that leads us into the season of Opulence, which
Now, what is the word opulence? I think that we'll start with that.
So the definition of opulence, I think, is going to be a good place to start, and it literally means great wealth or luxuriousness, which is what Callus is all about.
Wine, sex, and rock and roll.
Pretty much.
And drugs. But mainly wine and sex.
I think mainly wine
And
for Callus, but yeah.
I was strict to say I think I'm gonna take that one step back and go mainly wine. The royal wine that apparently makes them immortal or something. I don't know.
Something.
It hurts us. That's all I know.
So Callus opens up the menagerie as a means for guardians to continue to hone their abilities. And the Cabal in the menagerie are of Callus's loyalists legion. Like these are not enemy Cabal to Callus that we're getting rid of for him. The Cabal in there, he has ordered them and said like, hey, I want to make the Guardians stronger, and they need something to hone themselves against. I'm going to send you to certain death to be their whetstone. And they do it because that is the fervor that they have around their leader.
And again, just for those of you that weren't there for the season of Opulence, there was an activity called the Menagerie. Sorry, it makes me laugh every time I think of these things that Myth and I, obviously we've been playing Destiny for a very long time. We played a lot of D1, we played a lot of D2. It's funny when we start mentioning these things that just don't exist. That and even some of our viewers have said, hey, I just started playing Destiny just before Witch Queen started and found you guys, and this is a great way to catch up on lore. So for those of you that weren't able to experience some of this stuff, I really hope they bring some of this stuff back. Like it's go look up some videos of it. Try to get some type of experience of it, because it really was a lot of fun. It was a 6-man activity that Callus literally gives you this cup, right? Like he gifts it to you.
Yep.
And you gather little gemstones, and you put gemstones in it in a certain way, and when you got to the end of it, you got loot. And it was actually really fun to just go through, and you could get different roles, you could get different guns with different roles, and there was this whole like, hey, if you did this is your first rune, this is your second rune, this is your third rune, you'll get this type of gear or this type of armor or this type of gun or this type of whatever. Really, really fun little matchmade activity that also had a heroic version of it that was absolutely amazing. Fun activity. But it has a like as far as lore wise, the menagerie had a purpose.
Yes. And it wasn't just Cabal that were in the menagerie that we were fighting. Callus had scooped up, usually by force, any of the races that were in the solar system. We fought the Vex in there. We fought the Hive in there. I don't know that we fought the Fallen. I don't remember there being a Fallen section.
I don't
now
remember
that I
being
think
in
about
Fallen.
it.
Because I'm trying to think of like the final bosses in there. There was the two
There were two Vex,
or two
because
Vex.
you had
What was the third one?
the Mind and the
and the Minotaur,
and
the giant Minotaur with
yeah.
the waves. What the hell was the third one?
The Ogre. It was the Ogre. So Hive.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. There was
so
a
I think it was
Yep,
just
that's
Vex and Hive primarily, with Cabal mixed in there. So yeah, he had built these challenges for us to make us stronger, was the whole purpose, because he saw that as making
Grow fat with strength.
his own future tools stronger.
Yep.
And he put those tools to good use with the final raid of the Leviathan location, which was called the Crown of Sorrow. And the Crown of Sorrow has a very interesting history around it, that I'm going to actually do some... We've been more paraphrasing and more, stating from our own gameplay experiences. Crown of Sorrow has a lot of lore cards around it that I want to read because I think they're important.
Absolutely. Because Crown of Sorrow was not just the name of a raid, it's the name of a very, very important item.
Yes. Yeah. The Crown of Sorrow was a literal crown, or I guess helmet is a better term for it. And we get to learn where it came from and what it did and why it was important. So to start with that, I'm going to read off the Shadow's Greaves, which were the Crown of Sorrow Titan leg armor from the raid. And this is from Callus's point of view, and he says this. We found the Crown of Sorrow on a stray war moon. The Scions guessed that the ritual texts surrounding it claimed it was crafted in imitation of the Taken King's power to compel will. It did the opposite, of course, and consumed my loyalist, Galron. That was my first encounter with the witch. She has been plaguing all of my loyalists since then as a sort of viral language, perhaps even you. But she can be beaten. The Hive are not true beings of the dark, not compared to what I met at the Black Edge, not compared to me. I shall find her in her ascendant plane before the end, and we will have words. And I also want to read the Shadow's Gauntlets, which are the Crown of Sorrow Titan arm pieces. And they expand a little further on this. The Hive left the Crown of Sorrow on one of their war moons, and my shadows waged such a campaign to take it. We did, and we converted it into an Athenium world. But the crown was a trap for me. I suspected as much, which is why I did not wear it. After initial tests, my scions determined it was a seeing device of sorts, feeding all sorts of data to someone or something deep in the ascendant plane. But seeing devices look both ways. I had to have it, and I had to have someone wear it, because I believe I could control the Hive through a shadow surrogate. The Hive are not true darkness, not what I saw at the Black Edge, but they would provide an army just the same. Proud Galron was bred specifically to bring them under my control. So I have more lore cards, but I'm going to pause there for a second. So Callus waged a campaign against a Hive war moon, which we've talked about before, are literal moons, celestial bodies that Hive have carved out into space traveling cities, essentially.
Same thing they're trying to do to our moon.
Yep. They went to this war moon, they waged a campaign against it, and
real
they
quick,
found
now that I say that,
the crown there.
Now that I say that, it makes me kind of think, is the Hellmouth just a giant exhaust engine?
I mean, maybe. Yeah, that would make a certain amount of sense, I guess. Although we go into the Hellmouth to get to get to Crota, which I don't quite know how that worked, to be honest. But
Well, remember when we go in there, we jump and we just fall,
that's true. We just fall forever.
and then we just break our legs at the bottom or die. Like those are the most of us just
Yeah.
die because we can't remember the countdown. But that's anyway.
Anyway,
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
so Callus finds this crown in this war moon that they apparently obliterate the hive that are there to get to it. And he recognizes that this device is a trap. This device is meant for someone to put it on, and they are now under the control of whoever controls this crown, which he refers to as the witch, and I think it's safe to say that would be Savathun.
Yep.
So Savathun left this crown, whether it be for Callus specifically or just as a trap, one of many that she may have spread throughout the galaxies. And Callus finds it, recognizes
as the god of cunning does.
what it is, and he decides, okay, I'm not going to wear it. Instead, I'm going to make a Cabal. I'm going to breed a Cabal from his birthing chambers, from his cloning chambers, with a specific genetic makeup that I think is going to work best to give them the ability to control whatever's on the other end of this crown of sorrow. And
that's kind of that's a bold move,
right? And the Cabal that he creates is named Galron. And Galron is kind of a really sad story, honestly.
He's a little baby Cabal.
From the point where Galron is born to the point where we kill him in the raid as the final boss, is in game maybe a number of hours. Like he has literally not been alive for a full day by the time that he goes insane.
He's just a little baby
and is
Cabal.
Then, dealt with. But we get a little peek to Galron's point of view in a web lore. So this was a lore card that Bungie put out on their Twitter and the Bungie.net page that was called Am I to Cast a Shadow? And this is from Galron's point of view. And it says this. Galron knelt before his emperor in a chamber of gold. Every surface reflected a resplendent sheen that blinded him. What is this place? He asked. Many things, Callus replied, lounging with his cheek in his palm. This chamber once held an Archborn, the only one of her kind to leave the interstellar conduits of her people. It is the place where Valis Nur earned her shield in trial by combat. Shadows were cast here, history was made. Am I to cast a shadow? Yes, you were bred to be a sorrow bearer. I seek a hive commander, but those are not so readily available. So I made you. The council says the hive cannot be contained. They worry. Callus raised an eyebrow. Who among them? Counselors Rahl and Verloren. The Emperor shook the golden chamber with his gahoff. Only a few hours old, and already your words have killed two. Galron pondered what his emperor could mean. I will enjoy you, Callus said, and keyed a hidden control on the armrest of his divan. The ceiling shrieked as it opened like an eye. Galron craned his neck to stare at two hovering counselors descending with a massive plated helm from the vast iris above. He could hear a litany of voices shouting down at him from inside the thing as it slowly descended. He thought they sounded like warnings, but there were no discernible words in the speech. What is that? He asked his emperor. Callus finished the royal nectar in his chalice before belching. Your crown. Galron thought he could glimpse a faint violet glow on the inside of the helm as it drew near. "Isn't it beautiful?" Callus asked as the voices echoed from the helm grew louder. "No," Gowron replied. He thought he should run. He tried to stand, but he found that he could not, rooted to the floor before the Emperor's throne by the will of the counselors. "I do not like this," Gowron said. "This," said Callus as the counselors crowned Gowron, "is why you were born." The violet interior filled Gowron's vision. "What does it feel like?" asked the Emperor. "Fear," Gowron said. Callus must have responded, but Gowron couldn't hear him over the cacophony of voices. He suddenly found that he could see through 100 billion eyes, and that he could eat with teeth enough to consume entire solar systems. And he felt beautiful. A little peek into the very sorry first, first minutes or hours of Gowron's very short life.
And the one point where he's like, "Interesting, you've only less than an hour old, and you've already killed 2." Like, he literally spoke those 2 names, and Cal's just gonna have them killed.
Yep,
like
absolutely.
He's just gonna go murder those 2 guys. Like, those 2 guys are fucked. Sucks to suck. You 2 consulars, whatever. Don't even care about you anymore because you're dead. So they and then he's got scions that are literally holding him in place.
Yep, he's literally forcing this newborn. I say newborn. He's a clone, so he's like fully grown, but newly brought into existence, Cabal is being shackled psionically in place while they put this implement of mind control on him, and just hope for the best, essentially.
That's bold.
So we have a little more information about how all that goes down. This is from the Shadow's Plate, which is the Crown of Sorrows Titan chest armor piece. And this is Callus again speaking to us. "You've no doubt visited the ritual baths aboard the Leviathan, have you not? If you haven't, you must. And true, it is a place of recreation for my beloved soldiers, but did you know that they are born there? Yes, the joyful axe-wielding ceremonial bathers are but seconds into their lives when you cut them down. They are created from genetic patterns of the most virile martial artists of a bygone Cabal era, and Galron the Sorrow-bearer was once one of them. I played with his pattern, made certain he would be of strong mind and will as much as body. He had but one purpose, to bear the crown of sorrow and make the hive mine. Imagine my chagrin when his very personality was annihilated within minutes of exposure. Whatever viral language was etched into the crown's interior had taken over. Until you ended him, he belonged to a witch." So that's an interesting implication that Savathun, at least by Callus's telling, was in direct control of Galron while he was wearing the crown, and would be presumably responsible for anything he did while he had the crown, which was mostly just really try and make as much of a mess of the Leviathan as possible with the hive.
Absolutely. Because there's that the hive chitin, creeping. It's all over the place in there.
Yep. So the final bit about Crown, or the final lore card about Crown, comes to us from the Shadow's Helm, which is the Titan helmet from Crown of Sorrows. And Callus has this to say to us. "I thank you for freeing Galron, the Sorrow-bearer, from his waking death beneath the Crown of Sorrow. Speaking of which, don't your kind love to tempt hive artifacts? I've been familiarizing myself with Guardian histories, and they say one of you worshipped the hive to the extent that he betrayed the light. If this story isn't a sham, a shadow of your Titan tribe would be perfect for replacing Gowron. I need someone hardy like you to carry the crown in his place. Will you wear it when I ask you? Because the day will come. You don't have to answer right now. Think about it, and take this helmet in its place for now.
Interesting.
So the Titan that he's referring to there, that worshipped the hive to the extent of betraying the light, I think is Dredgen Yor.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
seems to be the most obvious. Either him or I guess Toland, maybe, but Toland didn't use an
Toland was a warlock
artifact.
though.
Right. Um, and it's interesting that at least at one point in time, Callus had an idea to make us wear the crown of sorrow. Although I think that's
Absolutely.
before he had different plans for it.
Yep. Well, and then when we do get to the end of that raid, and we kill Galron, the crown falls on the ground, and we can physically go inside of it. Like it's
Oh, it's huge.
huge.
Yeah. Yep.
And on the inside, there's all sorts of hive uh, um, lettering in there. There's all those little hive symbols, the hamburger, the pizza, the Tesla, all that stuff. Um, which no, this isn't a hive episode.
This isn't a hive
Uh,
episode.
there's one symbol that's different from all the other ones, and it's right in the center at the very top, and that is the symbol of Savathun.
Yes, which just makes sense with, you know, Callus attributing Savathun as being the one controlling whoever has the crown. So that, we defeat Gowron, and the crown is still in the Leviathan, still under Callus's control. He has it. He just hasn't put it on anybody, at least not for a
It's
good long
it's
time.
it's weird to me to think that this crown, like we kill baby Gowron and this crown falls, and we don't like go pick it up and deal with it. Like we just leave it there.
I think that the
That's
implication is
kind of
that
weird.
how would we do anything? Like
I'll give you that one.
we're in the heart of what has thus far been an ally, but has very clearly, you know, has made it very clear that they could become an enemy if at any point they think we're more trouble than we're worth.
Yep.
And presumably, at least by what they're telling us, is far more powerful than anything we have shown them up till that point.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's a bunch of bull or true, we don't know. But we also maybe didn't want to find out.
That's the ultimate ending to Season of Opulence. We go through the menagerie, we fight all these cool things to try to become stronger. There is one more thing I wanted to mention about the menagerie and the Crown of Sorrow raid itself.
Mm-hmm.
There's this lore book that we're putting together as we go through it with all these different scannables. And this lore book is I can't remember the exact name of it, but it is Callus's personal reading of the end of the world.
Well, it's like his personal predictions about how the end of the world are gonna go.
That's a better way to put it.
I didn't look into those too much, just because they're not really about the Cabal per se. They're more about
Right.
just Callus's theories about how things are gonna happen, and the
Callus
shadow
being
of
kind of
Earth is
nuts.
gonna kill this person and take over this and XYZ. And I don't know if he's pulling that information, if it's implied he's pulling that information from like an Oxa machine of sorts and Scion
That's the
prediction.
only thing I was curious of, because I'm assuming he's having all this dictated to somebody, and that somebody is writing it down. It's a scribe, and I'm thinking that the scribe is a scion.
I
So that's
think
where I
so,
was
yeah.
curious if there was anything, if you knew of anything that could tie that book to the Oxa machine, or something similar. Is there anything in game that you know of, or even out of game that you know of that ties the two of those together, or are those purely just what seems like the ramblings of a madman?
So nothing off the top of my head that directly relates them to the Oxa machine. it might be that those are like visions Callus got from the darkness or from the witness.
Ooh.
That he's dictating down.
Oh. Because the witness says something to Mara.
Right, the witness shows Mara herself as like a disciple of the witness. And I'm wondering if the witness did something similar for Callus, if that is truly who Callus met, then that could be like
So then
Callus
Callus,
saw these images
oh
of,
man.
oh, these things happen, and now I'm going to write them down as religious texts to my new Lord and Savior, Megamind.
God damn it. Shit. I wasn't ready for that. But he absolutely is Megamind. God dang it. Okay. I'm not gonna recover from that. Hold on. Okay. So, and I guess that's where I was kind of getting at there too, is like Callus is all of this is about these shadows that Callus wants to make or have, that are essentially what we think is his equivalency of disciples.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that he very much sees that his shadows as like, because Callus obviously is looking at himself as much of like a god, and for him to have met another god at the end of the edge of the universe, and for this god to show him all this stuff and teach him all these things and whatever and commune with them, and then him to go, oh, okay, well, you have all these disciples, I need to make my own thing that is disciples but not called the same thing, so we're just going to call them shadows, and then that's going to be my little personal disciple thing. So yeah, because that's what that god did, so since I'm a god, I've got to do that too.
So I found the lore book that dictates these predictions we're talking about. The book is called the Chronicon. It's
That's what it was.
not available in game anymore, so you'd have to go to like Ishtar Collective if you don't have it.
I think it is. I think they
Oh.
made all of the Chronicon available in game.
I stand corrected.
Because a lot of the lore, I know I have it in game, but I went through and collected all the pieces of it. But I also have stuff from like the Sundial that I didn't get all the pieces of, but I now have all the pages of.
Well, if they did that, that's super awesome. Hopefully you just have it then, but if not, Ishtar Collective has them.
I think it is.
But the very first paragraph of the very first chapter of the Chronicon says, the following pages are a true and authentic publication of the incredible deeds and remarkable discoveries of the Emperor Callus, greatest emperor of the Cabal, witnessed by his most loyal allies and recorded by his most trusted scribes. So
yeah,
it kind of sounds like Callus is just making shit up.
He's definitely just blowing smoke up our ass. That's exactly what's happening here. The most glorious, greatest emperor ever known to the history of the Cabal, Callus, Emperor Grandiosus. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's blowing smoke up our ass.
So,
okay, well, yeah, then I'll say that that's a good point to stop at, and we'll pick up next time at the sundial. And so
sounds good. So plans for next episode then, we're going to get through the sundial, the fall of Torbottle, the rise of and initial interactions with Empress Keitel, and then hopefully the Glycon and Vox Obscura. Those are kind of the major points that we're going to be touching on. And whereas for some of these things we've kind of been generalizing, so like the Leviathan, we kind of generalized a little bit. Some of the Leviathan raid layers, we generalized a little bit because they weren't super Cabal focused. The Glycon is one that we could do that with, but both Zora and I have talked about it. We feel like the events that happen on the Glycon are so important to what is going on right now in the story and what is likely going to happen in the future season or two, that we really want to do a deep dive on that and just tell all of it. So we are going to kind of hyper focus in on the Glycon when we reach that point.
Absolutely. Which will probably be the episode after next. I think.
Maybe we'll see how it all pans out. This may end up being a
Yeah.
5-episode series, which wasn't the intention, but here we are.
Yay! This is what happens when you hyper focus the beginning of the season and finish everything, and then you have a whole lot of time on your hands. So maybe take things in a little bit of a pace,
Yeah,
right?
you
Like
know.
maybe pace yourselves. Unless you're listening to our podcast, in which case devour all of them in one night if you can. Good luck. So
Don't
this
do that.
is don't don't do that. So this is this is the part of the episode where we get to thank yous and stuff. And last week we did a really cool shout out to all of our guys that left us some very kind comments and reviews on uh, Apple Podcast. And so now I'm going to shift it to Twitter. And there've been a few people that have given us some shout outs on Twitter. One of them was Sam, and I know I'm going to get the last name wrong. Myth, you might have to help me with this one.
I believe it's Sam Abraham.
Yes. I don't know why that was so hard for me, but that was hard for me.
That's what I'm here for.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so Sam was one of the first guys that left us a nice comment on Twitter. So thank you, Sam. We really appreciate it. Thank you for following us. Thank you for giving us a shout out. And yeah, we're gonna keep this thing going. My next one is as much as I love trying to make up names for things or entities, I couldn't make this up. We have a follower in Germany who has the title Astro MILF, and the moniker, she's at Queen of Thoughtland, and she has given us a shout out pretty much every week and told everyone that she knows about us, and I absolutely adore you for that. Thank you for being our own little personal, I say personal, like our proxy shout outer
For hyping stuff up.
Yeah, for being our
It's
hype
very feel good.
our hype person. It is. I love it. I absolutely love it. So to Astro MILF, Queen of Thoughtland, thank you. We really appreciate it. And keep spreading the word about us. See if we can get some more Guardians on board on our episodes. Myth, you got any?
Yeah, so on that same note, we've actually had another review come in on Apple Podcasts since our last episode. That I wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out to. This was
and give me a little bit of a dopamine rush and a feel good feeling.
There you go. This is another 5-star review by a user entitled Mew90p. He says, both presenters have a great dynamic and are very entertaining. I love all of the theories they bounce around in addition to the lore. Both the philosophical waxing are very appreciated. I enjoy when you draw parallels to the real world, history, and religion. So yeah.
Oh man.
Thank you.
I love being able to take something in a video game and say, look, this is, as much as this is a video game, like there are things that we can see in this that are happening or have happened in our history. And me being the self-proclaimed history buff that I am, I think history is good to learn from, and history can teach us lessons. And so if I see that in game and I can see that lesson being taught in game, I like to be able to point that out and say, hey, this is a way to learn. This is just another tool to learn from. So yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. Say all those messages, be it on Twitter or on Apple Podcasts. Unfortunately, you can't leave a comment. They only allow a review, which you can then add to. But I say any way that you guys can reach out to us and let us know what you think. Maybe you have a different opinion on a particular lore piece. Maybe you just want to stop by and say that you enjoy what we're doing. Any and all of that, awesome. We always love hearing about it. Our Twitter, I don't think we've said it yet this episode, is at Myths and Stories, spelt the same way the title is with the Z. So yeah, reach out to us anywhere. We always love to hear stuff from you, and we'll give you a shout out.
Hey. And then of course, thank you, Myth, for doing all the legwork and research. Without you, I would be nothing. You complete me, Myth.
All right, I guess.
That was an awkward pause. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess. Oh man. All right. Well, anything else?
No, I think that does it for tonight.
Sweet. Well, then, from all of us lore nerds to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next week.